Salutations. Welcome to the first episode of my renewed series, Foxx Plays KSP, the 365-day challenge. I'm calling this round 2. So I'm going to admit right up front that I've been having just problem after problem after problem recording this episode. And it's just gotten comical. Spent all day on it. Just recording software has just not been cooperating, but hopefully it will bear with me for just an episode, and I can work on sorting it all out tomorrow. This does mean that I've run this mission quite a few times already, but I'll run it again just for your benefit, and to talk about the payload and let you see it, and talk about the future and plans and whatnot. Anyway, I'm going to hop over to the launch pad, and I'm not going to put a cut because that seems to be giving it problems, so I'm just going to go right on over. Alright, here we are on the launch pad. So here's our vehicle sitting on top of an ALV-2 from Tantares. Tantares, viewers of my previous series, my previous Kerbal videos in general will know that I love Tantares. It's basically one of my favorite, it is my favorite mod, basically, of all time in KSP. And I've actually done a lot of planning of the missions this time around. Because the first time I would come up with a mission, build the craft, and then run the mission while recording it, all in each day, and it was a bit too much. So this time I've planned the missions and I've built the craft all ahead of time. And all the vehicles for about the first month, there isn't a single stock part in a lot of them, except for the launch clamps, I guess. And everything else is Tantares, or based on Tantares, like these expanding fairings. Anyway, I'm gonna, let's see, throttle up, SAS on, check. Alright, let's go to orbit. Good launch. Very good. Right, so our payload today is a series of satellites. It's 4 satellites, all going to be deployed by a satellite bus. And so we're aiming for a stationary orbit. They're communication satellites. Why do we need communication satellites? Well, because we're running remote tech. And remote tech, for those who don't know, requires all robotic craft to have a connection via antenna back to KSC or a remote control facility. You can build like bases on other planets and stuff that can serve the same function, but they still have to have that connection. And so what we're doing is we're deploying a constellation of communication satellites that will let us control all our future robotic craft, which is very important. And our ascent profile here is very steep. I don't like it. It should be at 45 degrees already, but oh well. It's part of the problem is it's a constant struggle getting used to the new aerodynamics. Having started playing KSP back in 0.17, I think. It's weird. I don't know. But anyway, we'll get to orbit. No, don't you worry at all. We'll get there. So let's see. What should I be talking about here? Oh, let's just get to orbit and worry about it later. Fix a bit of staging. deploy, and there it is. Here's our payload. It's, as you can see, it's 4 separate satellites, all connected to a bus, a common bus, that's essentially a heavily modified Block D, proton Block D. It's semi-autonomous in that it doesn't have a probe core of itself, but it does have its own power generation and its own communications to essentially act as a relay for the satellites while they're setting themselves up after decoupling. So for a stationary orbit, we are aiming for an orbital altitude of 2.868 billion meters. So we're rapidly approaching that. I've throttled down very low. Let's see here, 868. Alright. And that actually wound up being pretty precise, but it's not actually necessary. This network is really just a bootstrap network. It's not meant to be permanent. Its main strength isn't versatility or usability or functionality or any of those essentially synonyms. But its purpose is that it can set itself up from nothing. It doesn't require other communication. So we don't need to be terribly precise, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Let's just get our maneuver node set up. And we'll get ourselves pointing in the right direction. One thing is I'm not going to be worrying terribly about Kessler syndrome, spent stages and all that. I've done that. I've done the, either 100% reusable or, at the very least, nothing stays in orbit that isn't intended to stay in orbit. But it's tedious, and this is going to be a long series, so I've got to kind of pace myself. I've got to pick my battles here. That's part of the challenge. You gotta recognize when it's worth the effort and when it isn't. Alright, so now we're accidentally fired our engines there briefly, but no matter. All's well. So just time accelerate. Right, so one thing that is definitely worth noting is that because of the changes that I've made to the how the challenge actually works, I won't actually be deploying the satellites today. I'm launching from the surface to orbit, and that's going to count as the part of the mission that I do today. Tomorrow I'll actually perform all my orbital modifications and deploy the satellites into their proper orbits. For right now, I'm just kind of putting it in a parking orbit. Mostly it's in this specific orbit so that it stays in contact with the KSC. That's why this synchronous orbit is important. It's not really that it needs to be. I could do it with a semi-synchronous orbit, and that's how I like my Kom-Nets. That's how the future ones will be. But for right now, basically we want an orbital period of exactly 6 hours. So let's see here. Just fine-tuning it. This part we want pretty precise. I'm not worried about inclination or anything like that. Like I said, this is a very bootstrappy type operation here. Right. Yeah, and a deviation of it looks like under 0.1. That means that this should be suitable orbit for something like a couple years. But we definitely won't be hanging around that long. Do our orbital refinement and deploy our satellites tomorrow. And hopefully I have actually recorded this episode and I can be done. But anyway, a few hiccups aside, it's been fun getting started with the challenge again. It's a good challenge and I hope to continue with it. Anyway, I have been Foxx. This has been KSP. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.